Hey, what's up guys, it is Sykoo Sam here and welcome back to another episode of Unit Tutorials in Unity 2018, and this is actually Unity 2018 for the first time. I actually got it right this time. So as you can see, top left corner, it finally says Unity 2018. Jesus Christ. It took me some time, but hope you guys are having a fantastic Monday so far. As you know, per usual, or according to our new schedule for this channel, I would actually have a day off today, which would actually be pretty cool. I gotta throw it out there. I'm gonna be honest. But I decided I'll make a video on Monday as well, and actually every day until Thursday because I had a day off 2 days ago because I was sick. So welcome back. Like I said, in this video we are specifically going to take a look into the coding part. So that's right, we're gonna get into the programming a little bit, not too much, we're not gonna go very complex from out of nowhere, but I'm kind of gonna teach you guys the beginnings, the basics, and obviously be beginner friendly. So if you're a beginner, if you're new to the channel and all that kind of stuff, make sure to subscribe, obviously, so that you stay up to tune for the future episodes as well, because this is going to be a pretty long series, I think. But by the way, before we begin, I just want to also say thank you so much for all the support on the previous episode. The like goal was set a little bit high, but you guys smashed it. Like, you went triple or something like that. It was crazy. Thank you guys so much. Let's see if we can hit the like goal for this video as well, because the likes are what actually makes it very obvious for me to see. The biggest factor that makes it very clear for me that you guys really want to see more of this series or any other series posted on this channel, depending on the likes. So it's kind of like a way of judging. But anyway, enough talking, let's get right into it, guys. So to begin with, I'm actually going to create a folder here, and we can name that folder scripts. Now, this is the folder where we are going to locate all of our scripts in, which is pretty obvious by the name. This is only for, the organization, like sake of organizing everything, because if we have several kinds of components, several scripts that we want to attach to several game objects, we obviously want to have it a little bit more organized so that we kind of keep it clean and not, all the scripts are all over the place. So we're just gonna have to use this folder here. You don't really need to if you don't want to, but it's suggested, obviously. Now, one thing that we are actually gonna create a C# script, and when we do, you'll realize that there is a new logo for C# that actually looks really cool. I did not know that, and before recording the video, I was kind of like rehearsing, I guess, and I realized that. So it looks really cool. That's actually pretty dope. So we can call the script player. There we go. And what we're gonna do now is we are going to pick our prefab, the player object prefab, and we're gonna add the component player onto it. So the one that we recently created. Now I'm gonna open this up in Visual Studio. Let's see if Visual. Oh my God, it's on the correct monitor. That never happened. That never happened before. Actually, that's over exaggerated. That's happened quite a lot of times now inside of videos, but it used to be like on the other monitor. But anyway, so now that we are in the script, we are going to convert this regular C# script, and we are actually converting is a pretty bad word, I think. What we're gonna do is basically implement all the networking features that are available through Unit into our script. The way of doing that is probably something that a lot of you have heard already, which is HLAPI, so high level API. Basically, it allows you to use all the networking features that are a little bit more advanced for all the multiplayer games out there to be using within the scripts and within their games. So that you can, check for the server, check the client, check the local client, and all that kind of stuff. So, and I am in fact going to leave a link in the description for you guys to check out, which is the Unities API link, or Unities API list or website, or whatever you want to call it, which is for HLAPI, so the high level API. You can check it out if you want to learn a little bit further about HLAPI. The reason I don't want to go through the entirety of it right now is because it's going to be overflow of information. So if you want to read it on your own and take it easy, go ahead and do so. But it's gonna take way too much time to cover it up in one episode, so instead we're just going to pot it up or divide it into different parts of every single episode, obviously, because we are going to be using HLAPI for this series anyway. So speaking of which, we are actually going to be starting to use it. or start using it. There we go. And the keyword is using. So we're gonna implement that namespace, which is required for the hasAuthority to work. So underneath using Unity Engine, we are going to say using Unity Engine.networking, which is literally the hasAuthority itself, or perhaps the networking namespace itself, technically speaking, but it is required for using hasAuthority. And one more core change you want to do here is to change the class derivation. So, right now it's using mono behavior, which is completely fine for a single player game. But when you're making a multiplayer game and you want to make sure to use all these networking features, you also want to make sure that you're using network behavior. There we go. So this is a part of the networking namespace, which is quite obvious to see, but I just want to put it out there. For the beginners that are watching these videos too. So network behavior is literally, not literally, but kind of identical, if not literally the same as mono behavior. But the main difference is that network behavior quite obviously has all the networking components, classes, variables, everything that we actually want to use in our network game, a multiplayer game. So instead of using mono behavior, we basically use this whenever we need the networking, such as checking the clients, checking the server, and all that kind of stuff. So in here, we are going to create a void update. Oops. There we go. And now we are going to create a very simple movement for our players. So we're going to say if input.getKey keycode.d. I'm going to explain this code in just a bit. And now we're going to move the player to the right side every time we hold down D, or while we're holding D. So if that, then we are going to transform, or maybe this dot transform. There we go. Translate vector3.write times time dot delta time by 3f, which is the power, the amount of units we're gonna move to the right by every second. So here, long story short, we're basically checking if the player is holding down the key D on their keyboard. If he or she is, or any other kind of gender, I don't know if I'm triggering somebody with my latest videos, but so if it is, then we are going to be moving the player object to the right by every second, or to the right every second by 3 units per second. So it's very easy. This would work perfectly fine in any single player game. In fact, it will work in this game too. But here's the big, I was gonna say big but it kind of sounds weird. So here's the big, plot twist. There we go. That's the best way of possibly kind of explaining it. But basically, what we're doing here is we're saying that the player is going to move to the right side, but we're not checking if this current client trying to control this very specific player is actually the owner of this player. So what this will do is, as soon as you can, compile this script and go to Unity and play the game with multiple clients, as soon as one client is enough to do this, actually, as soon as one client holds down D, all the player objects will be moving to the right, which you don't want to do because that's not really the goal here. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, first and foremost, check if the client that is trying to control our player right now is supposed to control it. If it is the owner, or if it is somebody else, a random player who's, I don't know, trying to hack the game or whatever. So we're going to say, we're going to, highlight everything here. And we're going to cut it by holding down Control, clicking X, and we're going to have another if statement before as a parent. So here we're going to say if isLocalPlayer equal to true, then we can paste it in here and say, the movement itself. Now isLocalPlayer rather is a part of the Unity Engine networking, the hasAuthority basically. And it basically checks if the current client is actually the owner of this very specific object. Now there are a few twists that we're going to cover up, obviously, but I don't want to get into it right now because it's going to be overflow otherwise. I just want to keep it very clean for you guys, as clean as possible, in fact. But basically, you're now checking, is this client the local player? Which is, if it is true, then we're going to be controlling the player. If this client doesn't actually own this very specific player, then we're just gonna say, you know what, ignore this command here inside of the if statement. So we can actually go ahead and do it like this. We can go to Unity, build our game, just hold down Control B if you don't remember from the previous episode, by the way. So it's going to build and run directly. And we can actually run it inside of Unity meanwhile it's opening up. We can host it in Unity as well and connect as a client. And here we have the other client, so I'm just gonna play the game. All right, there we go. So we're gonna connect to the client, or connect as a client. And now you can see that we are on the same position with our, oh god, the voice cracks today. So we are on the same position with our 2 players, and you can see that we actually do have 2 players. And what we're gonna do is, by using this client, I'm gonna hold down Control, or I'm gonna hold down D, not Control, sorry. So boom, obviously one of the players move. Now if I go here, boom, the other one moves, and obviously the other one doesn't move. So this is done, like I said, to check and ensure that the client that is trying to control one of these players are actually the owner, or is actually the owner. Because we don't want the client, a random client, to control everybody's game object, right? We want every client to be given a player object and control that player object specifically. Although, like I said before, there's a little tweak with the isLocalPlayer variable itself. So the tweak is that the isLocalPlayer can only be used on the game object, which is the player itself. So simply, I can show it actually. So network manager component, obviously we have it inside of our game manager, which was added in our previous episode. So once again, if you want to watch it, the link is in the description. And in here we have the player object set to be the spawned player prefab, because this is the player itself and we're going to be spawning it. So long story short, this is the player. And it's okay to use isLocalPlayer on this one specifically because it is the local player. But let's say the player is going to be equipping a gun and shoot from it. We can't use isLocalPlayer on it because the gun model and the gun prefab is not actually the player. It's just a part of the player. And it's spawned later on in the game or equipped later on in the game. It's not a part of the player. It's not the player. It's just something that the player can pick up and use. And therefore, we still want to be, but still we obviously want to be able to, you know, check if the player that is using that gun is actually trying to use it, or if it is somebody else trying to use their gun and accidentally shoots from another player's gun because we don't check it, like the same example with the isLocalPlayer that we had here. Oops, there we go. I was trying myself in order to show you guys the correct way. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna allow our players to, you know, we're going to exemplify this, but we're gonna make it very simple. So we're gonna allow our players to spawn a sphere in our game. And from that sphere, when the sphere is spawned, the player will be able to click a button and the sphere will do something specific. And that is going to be pretty much the example of that gun example that I pulled up for you guys. So what we're going to do is we can actually start off by creating a new sphere here. And we can call this player sphere. There we go. And we can also create a new script inside of our scripts folder and call this player sphere as well. Like I said, just example names, prototyping, nothing very serious, you know. So we're gonna add that component to our player sphere now. And now that it's added, we're going to turn this into a prefab. So we're gonna drag and drop the player sphere into our project tab. I'm actually going to use the assets folder specifically. I don't really feel like organizing this much. I'm too lazy for that. But if you want to organize it and you want to have a prefabs folder, props to you. Actually, I want to be like you. You're my inspiration. So we're now going to remove the player sphere from our hierarchy, but we're going to keep it in project tab because it's our prefab. Now what we're going to do is we're actually going to, oh my god, I don't know why that pops up all the time. So we're going to go to our player script, and underneath, you know, still while using the isLocalPlayer equal to true, we are going to hop down a few lines and we're going to say if input.get key down keycode.i, then we are going to instantiate a the sphere, the player sphere itself, but we are going to do it a little bit different. So what we're going to do, we can actually use it like that. We can go ahead and create a prefab, or the game object variable for that prefab itself, the player sphere. So we can say public game object player sphere, and we're now going to say instantiate player sphere dot transform dot position quaternion dot identity. This little function here basically is going to spawn the player sphere, which is the game object that we had here, and it's going to spawn it at this game object's position, so the player's position, and it's going to have the rotation of default, so it's just going to be the same rotation as this game object. And this would work perfectly fine in a single player game, right? Because you just simply click a key or press a key on your keyboard, boom, you spawn the game object, no problems. But in a multiplayer game, you need to synchronize the spawned object to every other client except for the player as well, so that every client sees that the game object has been spawned, in case they're in the vision zone, obviously. But basically, the way of doing that is actually quite simple. It might sound like a difficult thing, like, oh my god, synchronizing, but there is a very simple thing to do here. So instead of doing that right off the bat in the if statement here, we're going to go ahead and create a new function here, and this function is going to be used to communicate to our server directly, and we're going to tell the server to spawn that object, the sphere itself. And we can actually do that by very easily setting up a command which literally looks like, or basically is, a function, but it's a little bit different. So we're gonna first and foremost say square bracket command end of square bracket, and in a new line we're gonna set the void itself, and we're gonna say public void spawn, right? Now, one more core thing to change here is, except for, a little difference here, is that we obviously set it as command, as a difference to regular voids, but we also have to include cmd with a capital C and lowercase m and d at the beginning of the void. So then after that, you can use whatever name you want. You can say spawn sphere, or just spawn, whatever it might be, but you just have to include cmd and set it up as command. That's literally it. After that, we do as usual, we just spawn that object. So we just say the instantiate thing, but we are actually gonna try and set up a variable which is going to be a game object, and that is going to be assigned to the spawned object itself, because here we're only receiving the prefab that we're supposed to spawn. But we also need that game object after we spawn it, so that we set the authority to be owned by this player. So what I mean is, we're going to say game object, we could just say sphere, I guess we can call it sphere. And after that, we just basically say we're going to spawn this game object, so we say parent is game object, and then we can say instantiate player sphere transform.position as per usual, and we are also going to say quaternion.identity. There we go. Now, the reason we are trying to archive this sphere that we actually spawn after we spawn is because we need to set the client authority, like I said, so that the player that spawns that sphere is the owner and has control over it. So we're gonna say network server dot spawn with client authority. So it's basically spawning, but it's spawning with the client authority by default. And we are now going to assign which game object we want to assign set the authority for, which is our sphere, which is the reason we wanted to use this. Because if we use player sphere, it's going to do that for the prefab, which is, that it has no effect. Because we are not spawning, the prefab is not the one that is spawned. Prefab is used to assign which game object is supposed to spawn. So after we archive which object we actually want to, assign to here, we just say sphere. And after that, we can say connection to client. That means we're basically building a connection, a bridge between the client, the server, and the sphere, so that we set the authority correctly. Now we're gonna do, actually, before I forget, we can also call pmd spawn here. So there we go. Before we forget to do something here, we actually want to go back to Unity after that we are done with the component. We first and foremost want to go to our player object prefab and assign the player sphere prefab into our player sphere field, basically. And one more thing we want to do is we want to go to our game manager and we want to click this plus button here so that we get one more field for a register spawnable prefabs. I already have it, so I'm not gonna click it. I tested this out to ensure everything was working, so I can't remove it either for testing purposes. But if you don't have this, if you don't see this field, just click plus, boom, you'll get one more. So you want to drag and drop the player sphere as well into this field. The reason we're doing this is because you need to register all the spawnable prefabs for your game inside of Network Manager so that it knows all the registered objects, because you want to ensure that the network and the server has full control over what game objects are supposed to be spawning so that they're ready for them. And if you don't do this, it's actually going to crash, so make sure to do it. Don't forget that. I think we're actually ready. So what we can do here, we could just go ahead and play the game. LAN host, there we go. Then we just press I, boom, it spawns. So it's a little bit small. The prefab is not really that visible. So what we can do, we can drag it into our scene, make it a little bit bigger, and replace it with the prefab that we just had. Then we can remove it from our hierarchy. So this is very basic, Unity knowledge. There we go. We can play it one more time. Just gonna ensure that we can. There we go. Okay, now it's bigger than the player. I don't mind. I'm okay. I'm okay with that. There we go. So now we are actually gonna be doing the experiment that I was talking about. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna open up the player sphere script that we created before. I actually have no idea what this does. To load the updated solution. Okay, sure, go for it. Uh-oh. Oh, okay. I was not supposed to click that. All right, cool. Thanks for warning me that you were actually going to close down the entire thing. Thanks, Visual Studio. There we go. That was so awkward. All right. So there we go. We can actually go ahead and open up the player script one more time. If you're not me and you're not stupid as me, don't do that. I was stupid, so I did that. But don't do that. Apparently, close it down. I don't know. I don't know why. I don't know the reason. So in here, we're going to assign the player or the client that is the owner of this object to be controlling that object. By the way, I actually forgot to check one thing. Let me see here. Yeah, we actually have it. I don't know if I showed you guys or if it was in deleted footage, but make sure that your player sphere has a network identity and that the local player authority is checked. Just make sure. If I don't know, if I forgot if I actually, still have that footage, but it might have been deleted because of a failure or something like that. So make sure that it has the component. There we go. So now we are actually going to be using that variable, the boolean that you check from the network identity component. So what we're going to do is we can first and foremost obviously do the same thing here using Unity engine.networking. And we can also change Muna behavior to network behavior. There we go. Let me make it space. So here we're gonna have a void update, just as usual. There we go. And like what we did in player was that we check with if the player is the local player. But like I said before, we can only check. It's only going to be true on the object that is actually the spawned player. The wall, or the sphere, sorry, I don't know why I'm stuck at wall, but the sphere is not our player, right? It's just something that the player spawns, but still has control over because he owns it. So what we have to do here now is we can basically check if hasAuthority equal to true. And this is basically speaking, let me show you guys this. So this is why we actually check it, and this is why we have a network identity added to it. So we check if the player, the current client, the local client has authority over this object, then we're going to be able to do something. If not, we're not going to do anything. And if we do have authority over this very specific sphere that the player spawns, then we're going to say if the player presses input.get, let's say input.get mouse button down 0. So left mouse button click basically. Then we're going to say this.transform.translate vector3 dot, let's move it upwards. Time dot time. There we go. Time 3f. Let's add the same movement speed there. So basically, we're checking if the client has authority over this very specific sphere, and if it is, then we're gonna say, hey, if the player presses, you know, the mouse button, left mouse button, or clicks the left mouse button, then we're gonna move this this sphere itself to upwards a little bit by 3 forces every time, or 3 units. Yeah, I think that's actually the right way of saying that. So we can now go back to Unity. Oh, and by the way, I actually edited one thing that I didn't show you guys, so I'm gonna show you right after doing that. So we need to go to player sphere and add a component called network transform to this as well, like the one that's added on our player. And the reason is because we want to synchronize the movement of our sphere to every client so that we can see when it's moving upwards, because that's what we're doing with the script, right? So go ahead and add a network transform script. You just add component, network transform, boom, you're there. So do that, and you don't really have to play around with the values unless you want to change the network send rate, but it's not very important. So go ahead and play the build and play the game, or build and run, I think it's called, and it's gonna do its thing. Meanwhile, we can actually open up from Unity and host it from Unity. Boom. And I am going to move this player to the left, to the right. There we go. I don't know why I say left all the time. I think I woke up from the wrong side of our bed today. So there we go. And we have our other player here. I can also spawn the sphere by pressing I. Now, if I have this client selected and I press the left mouse button, you'll see that the sphere of this very own player, oh my god, that's so slow. Come on, go up faster. The sphere of this player specifically will be moving, and it will also be synchronized to the other client. And that's exactly what we want. And if I go to this, it will obviously do the same thing for this only, and that's exactly what we want. So if I go back to this client, it's synchronized back and forth and so on, which is perfect. So, and that is how you use hasAuthority. So in conclusion, what we learned is every time you spawn a new player, you can use isLocalPlayer variable on it. And isLocalPlayer basically checks if this is the player, if this client is connected to this player, or if it is a random client that doesn't have anything to do with this player, this object. And if it's not the player object, you can instead use something called hasAuthority, which is pretty much the same thing. Even though, you know, technically speaking, if we have to be logical and all that kind of stuff, authority basically means that you set the authority of the spawned object to be controlled and owned by the player that only spawns it and no other players. So that's what we are doing here. And that is pretty much it. So this is the way you create a movement script. And this is the way you kind of like do everything in a multiplayer game, like spawning all the objects, spawning bullets when you fire a gun, spawning building material like in Fortnite. I mean, literally whatever you do. By the way, I'm so terrible at Fortnite. Let me know in the comments if you guys are good at Fortnite. I am so bad. I can't believe it. I played like 200 games almost, but I still am so bad. But anyway, back to the main point of this video. That is pretty much it, guys. That is gonna do it for today's episode. Hope you all enjoyed this little video on my day off. I'm about to cry that I made video. I'm just joking. I actually prefer making videos every day because I love making videos and I love having these results from you guys. You know, all the comments make my day, all the like goals make my day. You guys make my day. I just wanna, you know, I'm happy that I'm at a position where I can enter the Discord server that we have and just chat to people and you know, get beautiful responses back. So and weird responses back. So but anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this very special episode. I guess it's not very special, but hey, let's say that it is special. Okay, it's special for me. And in the next episode, I think we're gonna cover up the camera system. What I mean by that is, we obviously want every player to have their own camera, but if you kind of try adding a camera to player object as a prefab, it will bug out and it will, render all the cameras. So we're gonna go through that in the next episode so that we have every client has their own player with their own cameras so that we set it up correctly. But that will do it, guys. Let me know in the comments if you have any feedback, if you have any suggestions, if you want me to change up something, if you think that I'm too fast, too slow. I think this video is a little bit longer than usual, but let me know in the comments. I'm all ears for feedback. I just want to be able to teach everything that I know so that we get along as good as possible. And like I said, if you enjoyed this video and want to see more, make sure to drop a like. Those thumbs ups literally save me, my life. Uh, every thumbs up is literally saving me. This almost sounds like these Facebook posts, but you know what I'm saying. These thumbs ups makes it very easy for me to see what kind of videos you guys would like to see more of. And if you're new around here, obviously make sure to hit that subscribe button in the face so that you stay up to tune for new content, new episodes of this series. And join our Discord server, like I mentioned earlier. We do have one where we communicate, where we basically talk and meme a lot, literally post all the news about this YouTube channel basically, and receive and give help, etc., etc. So make sure to join, guys. It's our beautiful community, so why would you not be a part of it, right? So yeah, that is pretty much it. Thank you guys once again so much for watching. I will see you tomorrow and every day until Thursday. I'm just bragging the fact that I'm making videos quite often now. But yeah, see you guys. I will catch you in the comments or in the Discord server. Have a good night. Peace out. Bye bye.